Top Game with your host, Sammy Castro. Episode 14, 2600 OccFld Manager, Chief Warrant Officer 5 Jim Musch, a.k.a. The Mountain. Admin note, please direct your attention to the Simplify Fund, dedicated to providing immediate financial assistance and lifetime support to combat wounded, critically ill, and catastrophically injured service members. Since 2004, they've provided $178 million in assistance to more than 21,000 service members and their families. In the process, they've earned an A+ from CharityWatch.org, 4 stars from Charity Navigator, and a Platinum Seal of Transparency from GuideStar. Disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed on Top Game are those of the producers or the guests appear on the program and do not reflect the views and opinions of the Marine Corps or the Department of Defense. Thanks for tuning in.
Kevin, so
What'd you think?
I like it.
Do you listen to podcasts?
Not yet. I've listened to a couple just because I was told, hey, these are out there. These interviews came up and the topics and things, and thought that would be something that I needed to listen to, especially if it's like the head people of our community.
Who was the one that first told you about him?
Pretty sure Sam Carter or John Scoggins. One of those two guys told me about it.
They're kind of nerding out on it. They've been two of the main proponents for this project. And it was actually the last time I was here in San Angelo. Me and Scoggins and Simmons took a road trip down to San Antonio.
Oh, yeah.
And Scoggins was still kind of on the fence about what he was going to do as it pertains to retirement.
Yeah.
And Simmons had already just dropped his papers. And in the 3 hours and some change on the drive down to San Antonio, we got into some pretty deep conversations about fatherhood and marriage and juggling that and their professional requirements and whatnot. And I knew both of them, but not very well. Got to know them a lot better in the course of that road trip. Reminded me of some of the things that I used to do in college when I was in San Antonio, because these highways and whatnot. But that road trip was also reminiscent for me of the road trip that I took from Galveston to San Angelo to go retrieve my sons and then return back to Galveston to remove my father from life support.
Right.
So that highway stretch is an emotional one for me.
Sure.
You walk that road, during periods in your life where you're overcome by emotion and challenges and whatnot. And we were discussing a little bit in the ride over the implications of my father's passing while I was here. And one of the things that I heard recently in a podcast was that the goal from a character development standpoint is that an individual should aspire to be the most reliable person at their father's funeral.
Huh.
And when I heard that, it elicited a vocal response from me that was involuntary.
Sure.
And I couldn't recreate it if I tried. But the other part of that is you can't stop if you've achieved that, or if you feel like you've earned that distinction. That's for me. That's not the goal. Having experienced that, I think there's further to go, and part of that is this here, is being able to communicate out to the rest of the audience, the community, the OccFld, some of the things that are required upon us, required of us in order to be successful stewards of that which was granted to us by those that went ahead of us. So, I mean, for me to be sitting down here with Chief Warrant Officer 5 Jim Musch is an honor and distinction. I was kind of not necessarily nervous, but apprehensive of how you would respond when I asked you. That's why I did it in the manner in which I did, with somebody else there to kind of motivate you and
That's kind of a good setup. I enjoyed that, but no, I feel honored to be here. I mean, if I thought, 31 plus years ago when I was considering coming in the Marine Corps, that I'd be the senior guy in the field, I never would have, I never would have thought that, you know what I mean? I thought I was going to just come in for college and get out after 4 years, but have like a trade I could learn. And I originally was signed up for like aviation electronics when I first came in, and I thought that would be something I really like to do. I like to work on old radios and things like that, and I was pretty disappointed when I went through the MEPS and found out I was colorblind. So that started down a path of where I am today, but kind of Forrest Gump my way through, like how I wound up being in the SIGINT field. But
would you go through MEPS at?
So I went through in St. Louis. I was from Illinois, Southern Illinois, just out of St. Louis, and that was in 1986. I went to MEPS. So
I'm not a spring chicken. I was only 10 years old at that point in time.
Yeah, I get that all the time now. In fact, there's quite a few people I work with that are bragging on hitting their 40 threshold, and it makes me smile quite a bit. But that aside, I mean, I never really intended on staying in, but I made the most of the first tour I had, and I got out after my first tour and went to college, and I stayed in the reserves because I always wanted that tie back into the Marine Corps, because I love that that bond and friendships that I made, and just being a part of that type of organization was something I didn't want to lose contact with. So I stayed in the reserves, which was really a very good decision for me, because I went to college for a while. I was on reserve duty. They had some contractors out in Korea at the time for the PRD-12, if you remember that direction finding piece of kit.
I don't.
Yeah, it's pretty old. But one of the contractors for that was noticing that I was taking some of the Marines in and kind of teaching, because there was only one instructor and there was probably 15 to 20 students, and I just kind of got it, and I was taking some of the other ones on and saying, look, this is how it works and all that. And he was really impressed with that, and he said, boy, we sure could use a guy like you, on the outside. When's your last day? And I said, well, I'm done, like next Friday, I'm done. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm a reservist. So he goes, oh, really? So what do you do? And I said, I'm on break from school. Long story short, he kind of interviewed me right on the spot, and I got hired as a defense contractor and moved from...
War profits here.
Yeah, yeah. So I moved from Illinois and went to work for Potomac Research International, and I enjoyed my time there, and we did a lot of Army contracts and things like that, but it was all in, ground electronic warfare and SIGINT, and just getting that side of things. I kind of had a real passion for like how the systems work, and the engineering kind of aspect of that, which makes you have to be proficient at doing your SIGINT job, because all that math and everything, computer, whatever's going to interpret that and then spit you out an answer. And if you don't know how that computer came up with that, well, shame on you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So a lot of stuff I focused on was, how do I be able to challenge myself in against like a computer, I guess. Because when I went through school, encryption was you taped graph paper together, and your mark space across there, and however many blocks you filled up, like 256, you had 256 mark spaces, right? So if you kind of conceptually get that in your head when you talk encryption, I always go back there in my mind, right? So when people talk big numbers, I'm like, wow, that's a really big number. It's a lot of graph paper, So I don't know that other people do what I do, but in that fashion. But
probably not.
Yeah. But I mean, that's my context is, I started doing this job before we had a lot of automation, And if you wanted something done, you didn't send an email. So there's like one email system in the battalions back in the day. You got on the phone or you went and talked to somebody.
Yellow Canaries?
There's a lot of that, You had runners and and everything. But it was just different, it was different back then. So that having that context to where it's at now, I would never have guessed it, And I remember when they were first linking computers with fiber optic cables and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, wow, that piece of light's going to take the signal over there and understand a little box. But that was always fascinating to me. Why does that work that way? And it was the basic thing, is like, it's just ones and zeros, So I always had a passion for that. So I guess that's why I kind of stuck with it, because it just kept getting more and more complex over the years.
That's been one of the key aspects of this field that has kept me engaged and I guess motivated, is that you can't get to the end of it, right? You can't learn it all. And not to go off too far off on a tangent, it in a lot of ways it's kind of like jiu-jitsu, which I train with my sons and some of the guys out in Okinawa, is that you're never done,
right?
And I still kind of feel like maybe a SIGINT blue belt, right? Even as a master sergeant, I know that there's so much more out there that I've never been exposed to. Conceptually, I get the theory and the applications of it, but to actually get down in the weeds and say, I've got this, and then move on to the next thing, I don't feel confident enough to ever say that I'm that subject matter expert. I may have more expertise than the majority of the Marines at the MEF or in that particular conversation or working group or meeting or conference, but I don't feel like I'm that complete individual as it pertains to the OccFld.
No, but I will tell you that I share that. I still don't feel that I've learned everything. And if I sat over here saying, "Oh, I know everything there is to know about it," that would be an outright lie. I think one of the benefits of being in this long is just being able to build a collective, as far as seeing people that are good at one aspect of our job or another. You don't always have to have the answer internally,
right?
But having that collective knowledge is so important, right? That I will tell you, that's probably hands down why I'm so successful, is you surround yourself with those type of individuals or know where to reach out, and don't be afraid to say, hey, I don't know much about this. Let me call Castro or somebody like that and see what they think. Or if you have a new idea or something, it's all about inception. Well, if everybody thinks your idea is dumb, well, you should probably shut it down, right? So, I would never. And if you are around somebody that thinks they know everything, it's probably somebody that you want to distance yourself from, because that's really not a healthy. That's not a healthy thing to think. Oh, I know everything. Well, I didn't see you glowing the last time I checked. So, that's been something I've taken to heart. Is when I was younger, you always like that competition and things like that, and being better. And even with that, if I was good at, copying Morse code or something like that, it was always a challenge, but that wasn't like to get to a stage where I'm like, I'm better than you. You know what I mean?
Right.
I guess that's a personal thing about me. I've never been that way. It's more how you can benefit the greater portion than to self-serve,
So some of the guys that I've had on in previous episodes, I'm sure you know quite a few of them. Guys like Chris Sonneborn, guys like Kevin Simmons, Derry Cross, and the list goes on and on. What we all have in common is that we've made the conscious decision to stay on the enlisted side of things, and inevitably towards the end of those episodes, those interviews, and I've asked them time and again, either off mic or on mic, who would you like to see from different, vantage points throughout the structural hierarchy as a future guest. And the overwhelming response was, we need to get some of these chief warrant officers on here to kind of give us that perspective, because it is very senior enlisted, top heavy, so to speak. And some of them had even go so far as to say, you need to get Jim Musch on. But for me, it was and even for them, it's like that it'll be hard to do. because he's somewhat of a private individual, and he may not agree to it just out of his humility alone. So, for the record, I want to say that I appreciate you agreeing to do this. And additionally, I'd like to ask, what went into the calculus for your determination to go the Chief Warrant Officer route, and what were some of the things that you were considering as cons to do that, and what made you ultimately pull the trigger?
So I will tell you that the broken service really hit on me. Coming back with almost 4 years behind the peers that I had left. I got out in 91. I was out for that whole time up until late summer of 94. And one of the things that I had to do was I came back in as a sergeant. I had got out as a sergeant. I came back in as a sergeant. My data rank was my data re-enlistment. So it wasn't that I got busted, but it felt like I got busted. Right. You know what I mean? So the good thing about it was I was running across all those people that I'd served with before, and they were staff sergeants, and some of them even gunnery sergeants. And it was funny because when we were checking in, I was checking in with a buddy of mine, Burt Miller, if any of you guys know him. He was like, "Hey, Jim, did you get in trouble?" I was like, "No." I said, I had broken service. It's like my first week back. And he's like, "Oh, okay." But he was getting put in a role as like a company gunnery sergeant, or senior analyst in the OCCAC. And just that credibility I had with him, I got put into very senior roles as a sergeant, and that helped me on my fitness reports. And it helped me be observed at a level I probably wouldn't have been exposed to those people if I hadn't been challenged that way. So I don't feel that I lost anything because I was already being put in those things, and I was included with all the staff MCOs and all that kind of thing.
You kind of identified as being one of us.
Yeah.
A known quantity.
So, I mean, that helped me tremendously, and I would go to these meetings. I'd see my friends, and some were getting promoted to gunnery sergeant and that, and I was like, man, I'm kind of behind a little bit. So that did factor in when I first started thinking about the warrant officer route. But it just was a thought back in the back of my mind. Oh, that's something you should do, but you need to get to this level. I always wanted to be a gunnery sergeant. So I was like, okay, you're going to get to that, and then you can submit for it. So I talked to... That was
the common wisdom back then? You had to be a gunny before you submitted?
No, just for me personally. That was something I wanted to achieve, and it could be as silly as watching the movie Heartbreak Ridge,
right.
Gunny Highway, and that's one of the movies that was out when I actually signed up, so just as simple as that. I want to be a gunny, so that really weighed in my mind, and I kind of put the warrant officer thing in the back and just kind of left it there. And I had some really good opportunities to go, work at Point Magoo as a senior analyst, as a staff sergeant. I did research and development out there and all that. And I was being exposed to all this really cool stuff. And it was being run by a warrant officer. And the warrant officer back then, Jim Hermy, he and I didn't get along very well because we had very like personalities and butted heads quite a bit. But he brought me in his office one time and he said, "Why haven't you submitted for a warrant officer package?" And when he said that to me, I was just kind of like, what? I didn't really even think that. He goes, "You need to put your package together to become a warrant officer. And why haven't you done that?" I was like, well, I didn't think I was ready. So him saying it to me that time, I started working on my warrant officer package. And he probably talked to some other warrant officers. But then from then on, all the warrant officers, all the 2602s that I've run across, were like, "So when's your package going to be done? When are you going to do that?" Anthony Watkins and folks like that telling me, Andy Orr, Bruce Vickers, who's actually my platoon commander down in Pensacola. I went through there. Folks like that I really admired in our community telling me that I needed to become a warrant officer because they weren't going to be doing it, forever. And they needed somebody that had that like mindset. And I never pictured somebody like observing me in that way, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I figured I better get off my ass and get my package submitted. So it was more of of me thinking about it, having a thought in my mind, but then basically the folks that were the 2602s seeing that in me and kind of directing me in that way. So ultimately, that's why I chose to do it. And to be honest, I had no idea, other than seeing them in meetings and being the person that could always answer the questions. I had no idea what it meant, and still figuring it out to some extent, because you never know what job you're going to wind up getting into.
Right.
So I guess hopefully I answered it in that way, but for me it was that I had the thought in my head, and that it seemed like there was a lot of influence to submit my warrant officer pack.
So when you went through, is WOBIC then what it's like now, or are there any differences?
Yeah, I think there's more rules now.
More rules?
Yeah, I mean, so I got selected in 2002 and went through WOBIC in 2003, but I pinned on before I went to warrant officer class. So I got I think a little over a week at 3rd Radio Battalion, or was it 3rd? It was 1st back then. So I got promoted to 1st Radio Battalion out by the front gate, and had about a week or so to walk around with the people that I was just enlisted with, wearing these bars. And I will tell you that was it was weird, because the people that treated me poorly just days prior were now the people that were kissing up to me, and I was just like, wow, that's very telling,
Right.
And I won't mention people's names. They could figure out who I was serving with back then, and it's probably nobody that listens to this podcast right now. But that was a little hard, and then distancing myself from, because you're supposed to, the whole fraternization law, but there's an easy way to do that, and still remain professional. It was weird. The transition for me was a little strange, because one minute I'm Staff Sergeant Musch, and then the next moment I'm Warrant Officer Musch, and I had really prepped to get in shape, and that's probably the best shape I've ever been in my life, was when I went through Warrant Officer School. I don't think that part of it's changed. I think there's people that might gloss over the fact that Warrant Officer Basic course was your rite of passage to the Officer Corps.
Right.
And it's no joke. You're taught the same material in half the time, and the physical events are all the same as what the young lieutenants do. So I went through there. I was 34
Wow.
years old. Yeah. So I'm already a big guy. So
a lot of icy hot and Tiger Balm.
I did. I smelled like that pretty much all the time. I will tell you, to be completely transparent, I went through there, and I've always struggled with pull-ups, being 6'8" and weighing upwards of 250, 272 pounds now. But I've always struggled with pull-ups, and one of the things that actually helped me was when I went through Warrant Officer School. I was still doing high first class, but I was getting like 12, 13 pull-ups. I'd really only max pull-ups maybe twice in my entire career. And I remember being really stressed about that, because I was sitting at about 11, 12 pull-ups when I went through Warrant Officer School. And one of the stipulations was if you didn't do 10 pull-ups, that you would be stuck on remedial. But I was right on that cusp, so I was like, you know what? I think I just want to do remedial PT anyway, So that was one of the best decisions I made, because you're PTing every day, and you're basically forced to do it, But that helped me out in all the events through Warrant Officer's course. I'm not sure that people share that kind of mindset nowadays. They just think they can do it easy, and for me, I saw people that didn't do the remediation kind of stuff because they were too proud or whatever. But at the end, when we did our final events, I was in far better shape doing, the endurance course and the PFT and all that kind of stuff, because I'd been, basically running every day to get in shape for that. So if anybody's listening that's thinking about putting a warrant officer package in, make sure you're in good shape, because now I think one of the prerequisites is that you have to have a first class, in order to pen. And I know that wasn't the case for others that I went through my course with, so I don't know that they would have made it back then.
So let's kind of get into that. What qualities, attributes, characteristics would you identify as being must-haves or good-to-haves for somebody that's looking to put in their package? If I'm Sergeant Castro and I'm kind of, spitballing the career path that I want to take, what are some of the things that over the years you've seen are indicators of success?
Troubleshooting abilities, thinking outside the box, but also knowing how to implement something into a material solution or a training solution, as far as like acquisitions kind of stuff goes, like not just bitching about something, but like being able to capture that into a requirement and do it. Probably the most important thing, I think, because that transcends everything, like all the stuff we're doing for the TNR, right? If you don't have a basis for how those training events kind of come out, if you don't understand how that works into like a mission statement or a mission essential task or any of that kind of things, or how that relates to how do I get somebody trained on those critical mission tasks that I have to do, you probably need to tighten that up, because it's all part of a process. So somebody, aside from the regular Marine Corps stuff, and yeah, it's cool to get a high class, PFT and shoot well, and all those things are still important. But so I guess being well-rounded, leadership, being humble, and then that key piece I told you about not thinking you know it all. I'll tell you that, I've seen probably every type of leadership style, and you kind of take the best of what you've seen or what you've observed or what you've actually presented, and that comes back with the best results. And one thing holds true is just treat people like you want to be treated. I'm not a yeller. I used to be, and it was never successful. But I guess someone that has a cool head is well-rounded. I kind of took off on a little tangent. Sorry.
No, you're good.
But
we go where you want to go. This is your episode.
So is well-rounded, technically proficient in not just one aspect, like not a myopically focused stuff, because not that they haven't corrected now, but there for several years we took a lot of very strong staff NCOs for warrant officers that were very good at one discipline and not completely rounded, right? So over time, it's taken them a lot longer to kind of fold in, if you will, to what's going on. Always working outside your comfort zone is important. If you don't know something, always challenging yourself. Somebody that shows that kind of thing is very important. Not being a yes man. It's like I don't like to be questioned as a CWO5 very much anymore. But, someone that will respectfully go, well, why is that? And then you can explain it to them, and it's like, okay, that makes total sense. There's a time and place for that, but someone that's, hey, why do we do this way, or why is that? Because I want to know, because I want to be able to replicate that and have it sustained and all that kind of stuff. Someone that demonstrates that kind of stuff. You have to have a lot of observation time on folks like that, or you have to have, I kid around because I watch the Game of Thrones and stuff. You have little birds everywhere, and they report back to you like who's putting more officer packages in. I'm like, well, how are they at this, or how's their gear knowledge, or how are they with training? Have they been through, curriculum development? Have they done all these things? And it's like, no, it's like, well, go ahead and start. If you think that person's in there, you might as well start sending them through these courses so they're a little bit more competitive when it comes time. somebody that's well-rounded and all that won't take away from the staff NCO Corps. Not that we're going to build out of that, but if it's somebody that's meant to be a great senior enlisted or whatever, that is a mutually supporting thing to somebody that's a warrant officer.
Right.
And I know you were going to ask me that question. So what do you see the difference between the two? Well, look where I'm at now. There is so much benefit to having like John Scoggins and Sam Carter there and Ann Sagabiel sitting right in there. That's probably one of the most difficult jobs when it comes time for me to write their fitness report.
So I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Because Scoggins brought it up in his interview when he made some moves to get structure shifted over so that we could get a 2651 OccFld specialist. And he's like, that's good. Now I got to compete with that guy.
That's right.
So how do you rack and stack Ann, Sam, and John?
It's actually pretty easy.
Really?
Well, for me now, I've written so many fitness reports. It's like basically, if I write somebody a good fitness report, they're graded accordingly, right? Because they know I'm at a more senior level and things like that. The benefit I have right now is they're at all different points of their master sergeant rank. So Ann being a relatively new one, I can write several fitness reports on her and make her, stand out. John, very easy to write a fitness report. Sam, obviously very easy to write a fitness report on. But just do your job, right? So my end goal is to get every one of those people promoted. And as long as I do that, I feel I serve them well, So writing fitness reports for those kind of people is an honor, really. And it's something you need to take very seriously, because if I didn't do a good job writing my fitness reports earlier on, your profile follows you everywhere.
Right.
I guess as far as like how is that supporting, was that person's doing an outstanding job like at headquarters, I want to make sure they get promoted, or recognized or whatever, or in the job that they should be doing. So I have a little bit of influence on that kind of stuff. So I guess that's how I help out. But I mean, just giving them supporting fires from, the weird dynamic of headquarters Marine Corps. You can, you see it at a much clearer level up there because, enlisted to even junior officers to like how the senior officers are treated is it's just different. It's just different. But you can walk up and go to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning and be getting coffee with a 2 or 3 star general in line with you. So they're all just regular people. But the warrant officer, like 5, kind of thing, I think there's more CWO5s up at headquarters than anywhere else in the Marine Corps. At this stage, where you're working with the best of the best in the community, that's an honor. That's an absolute honor. Mutually supporting the whole way up, at every level, from warrant officers being taken under wing by some strong gunny, and even if you were the same rank, it's like kind of helping each other along. And then when you start learning more as a CWO2, you're getting a little bit more responsibility, getting a little bit more broad. You're still working hand in hand with the senior enlisted, it's been that way my whole time. I've always been surrounded by very competent people or very incompetent people that, make my job easy as well. Right? So,
right.
I don't know. For me, it was a good choice, but I don't see a real difference at the senior levels on who's smarter or whatever. Because I'd never challenge a guy like Sam with all the stuff he's got going on in his head.
Right.
I mean, that'd be just ridiculous. John, as far as like manpower structure kind of stuff, I can enable those guys to like run,
You ever have to like pull them back because they're going too far?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think I've ever tried to limit them. In fact, I will not take credit for it, but Sam had backed me up is years ago we were talking about the 51 community, and I said, man, I'm just seeing something way bigger than you are right now. and your community basically, I think, could double with the stuff you got going on. Not just communicators. You're talking about You're talking a much bigger thing. And then
data engineering.
Yeah, and then he came back to me like, it was a couple months later, and he's like, "Is this what you were kind of meaning?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about." But I mean, it was so much bigger than what I thought. He took that and ran.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if I'd constrained or like downplayed any of that stuff that he was? I mean, it's awesome. And the folks I work with up at headquarters are mostly that way. So
yeah, I can honestly say that the tone, the environment in the same room between last week and this week is completely different. When you've got the 51s in the majority, it changes some of the conversations. And not that I was trying to play the crowd, but you could see the look on their faces when they heard a 91 say that we should consider flip pay for programming languages. They were like,
why not? Why not? I think there's a lot of benefit, and nobody's really modeled what the now retirement system looks like, right? So you have a lot of incentive with people putting their own money in there, and there's not the 20-year model for somebody staying in the Marine Corps. That retirement plan has just kind of gone away. So nobody can really say what that's going to do to our numbers. What's that going to do to our senior structure? In 10 to 15 years, what's that going to look like? So if there's incentive for people that are professionals that take time to get all these credentials and things like that, why wouldn't we pay them just like industry pays those folks? I think that's a great idea. If the Marine Corps can afford it and we can sustain that, I think that's a great plan. I want to see more of that kind of stuff. We used to get it wasn't really proficiency pay, so to speak, for like being a good code copier back in the day, but I will tell you that got me several special liberty passes, which you can equate to time off in a different way, or being
it's kind of like
a different way.
Multiple 333 DLPTs, you got a free 96 or 72. I think was a battalion order out at second for a while, and I leveraged that at every opportunity I could recall. Right. I took advantage of it. I
still feel like that's getting paid. So I think it's a great idea.
So you kind of alluded to it, and I wanted to circle back to it with regard to the Chief Warrant Officer selection process. So Sergeant Castro submits his package. It goes up to Headquarters Marine Corps. What happens to it from there? Does it come across your desk as a CWO5 in the community? Do you kind of shop that around to the rest of the CWOs?
So I usually have I talk with MMRA folks, and I have a good feel for who's being considered. I'd have no by name kind of the stuff, but I give the criteria to the selection board, like what we are looking for that year. And I will tell you that it's that staff sergeant to gunnery sergeant that's got 10 to a dozen years under their belt at minimum, because I've seen, and you probably have as well, the folks that get selected right on that cusp that struggle a little bit, at least for the first several years of their wearing warrant officer rank. So I will have communication with them. I usually talk with the senior warrant officers in the battalion to find out who, throughout the Marine Corps, who is thinking about putting the package in. If we have done a good job of bringing that person in, and I think we can tighten that up quite a bit, especially after seeing some of the numbers that we've had for submissions. I think we can get that number way up there. It's basically at a 50% now. So if we have 8 allocations, there's 16 packages that have been submitted. I will tell you that my guidance to the Warrant Officer Board is that if we have to gap certain billets because we don't have the quality individual, I would rather go quality than quantity. So that is my guidance to them, and they have all their considerations for, like, somebody that's doing the first class PFT and all that kind of stuff. They consider all that stuff without me saying any of it. And then there goes the hey, what jobs have they had, up to this point in their career that make them a good candidate for being a warrant officer? Have they done their Defense Acquisition University stuff? Have they been through their BIC training? Do they have podium time at a schoolhouse? Do they have, those basic things? Are they part of the cadre in the thing? Did they, what did they do in battalion? Were they just kind of a shadow walker? Or were they like out in the light, like getting stuff done?
Right.
That's basically it. And in talking to the senior enlisted, it's like, hey, would you want to work with this guy as a warrant officer? And they're like, no, that could be a good one, or just taking those little things in. And it's also funny too, is I've also talked to some OPSOs and asked them, it's like, hey, do you want this person to be advising you potentially down the road when you're a battalion commander? And you'll see the look of like, oh, yeah.
Right.
So I'll tell you, man, other than like you show all those things, does that person actually want to be a warrant officer? Because it's more than wearing this little shiny bar on your collar, man.
Right.
You never want to be the guy sitting in the room, especially at the level I'm at now. You have the general point to you and go, well, Jim will tell you about this, or something like that. It's like, can you imagine standing up in a forum like that with a 3-star and just going, the CWO5 doesn't know, but I'll find out and get back to you as soon as I can. I mean, you need to know your crap,
Yeah.
So
there's a couple of times you can pull that off if it gets into like the weeds, but for the most part.
Yeah, but it's that just from that level all the way down to when you first put on W1.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to be the person that has the answer, the person that somebody seeks out to get that answer. So that holistically is what we look for in a warrant officer, and the criteria is all that stuff at some point to where you can tell it's going to grow into something more.
So the last time I think when you and I were here together in San Angelo, we were part of a learning analysis to determine if we needed a 2602 and or a 2691 course. And back to your point about there being mutually supporting communities. In the absence of that, because neither of those have come to fruition as of yet. I know we're still working towards that goal as a desired end state. But how have the chief warrant officers sustained themselves or approached professional development in the absence of a formal course, and what do you expect out of our senior enlisted in order to facilitate that towards that end? So if it's a Master Guns Ops Chief to a WO1 that just checks in after WOBIC or a CWO2, what does that interaction need to look like in an effective environment?
So at that level, you should know what your actual TNR events are and where they play out. What are your work roles, right? What am I supposed to be doing? You don't just come up with a new MOS and it doesn't have anything assigned to it, or you don't come into a new MOS and just have nothing assigned to it. So understanding is like, hey, the training readiness manuals for a 2602 are these things, and this is why we're creating a course, right? Is, there's acquisition heavy stuff, there's, the heavy analysis piece of that, and just knowing where that person fits in their specific work roles, and knowing where the enlisted piece mutually supports that role, that's very helpful. I challenge a lot of folks to even know what they're supposed to be doing. In absence of a course, somebody will always say, oh, well, we don't have a course for 2602s. It's like, yeah, but you have a training and readiness manual. You have an MOS manual, and it spells out what your description is, what your job is. I think we're doing a good job now of like really getting some detailed work behind the electronic warfare piece of that. But we took like all the entry level billets that warrant officers have. We captured all that stuff and even some of the senior level stuff, and came up and refined all the events and all the performance steps of all that. So if you read through that as a brand new warrant officer, it's like, well, I don't know how to do that, or yeah, I know how to do that, or it has to happen, this way, or that's where I go for that. You're only helping yourself. And when we get a formalized course, it should have all those things in there, or we'll have a lot of those things in there. And then we just refine it over time. And if our job description changes over time, then we just have to know and use the process to get that fixed. And it's no different for the 91 course.
Right.
I would almost say you could do a combined course, and I would welcome
and that. Was one of the codes that we had discussed, correct?
Yeah. I think I'd welcome that, because especially if you had it down here, at Goodfellow, you could have like a culminating event. If you really work the details on it, you could have the folks going through Mark. You could have some of the entry-level students kind of doing a culminating event, and then you could have both the chiefs and that working together. And they already have worked together, but it's just at a different level, and you're just kind of codifying things a little bit better. I
think an unforeseen circumstance out of that would be that the level of competition as it pertains to Giant Jingle would skyrocket.
They need to get some new blocks. Those things are all jacked up. Yeah,
y'all beat the brakes off of them the last two TADs here. But it goes to the point though that Marines are competitive, and this occupational has a certain level of competitive edge to it that is unique in my experience. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of circle back to was, tell me who you walk with, I'll tell you who you are. Who are some of the individuals that you've walked amongst during your career that have had a significant influence on your professional development? What characteristics have you incorporated into your toolkit, and what do you try to pass on to those who reach out to you for mentoring?
Yeah, this doesn't have to be somebody that's still serving, because I think that list is extremely small now. Not that I don't work with great people. That probably would come off wrong if certain people heard that. But I mean, people that influenced me along the way, early on. Like, I needed a boost when I came back in, because that was kind of a hit. Things had changed a lot, and getting back with the folks that had rotated out of the battalion that were rotating back in at that point really helped me. And guys like Bruce Vickers, that was a staff sergeant when I first got to Pensacola back in '87, and was now a warrant officer. Just getting encouragement from people like that. Some of the senior enlisted back then, man, I'd really have to dust off some old stuff up in my brain housing group. But there was several folks all along the way that influenced me, but mostly my memory goes from once I was a warrant officer up to now, and helping me along the way. Colonel Coate, Randy Pugh were like the battalion commander, and the OPSO at the time. Matt Worsham was the XO in Reedy Battalion, and they saw something in me that I didn't know, and I became a platoon commander in combat, and that was way outside of my comfort zone. But, writing orders or fragos and stuff like that, and making sure I was on top of all the operations like a regular, unrestricted officer would have, that earned me a lot of respect with some of the regular officers are now, like Sasha Kulo. She was a platoon commander with me. She's now a major, possibly a lieutenant colonel select or whatever. Doug March, that was down here. He was a platoon commander with me. And so those folks that helped me out tremendously is like kind of growing up or cutting your teeth as far as, that side of my job. And then just sticking with it, over time and being that mutually supporting person to like folks like my battalion commanders, Bo McLean, Colonel Halverson, they're good people to work work with. I always say that, people say, who'd you work for out there? Or, does Scoggins and Carter work for you? And I'm like, nope, we work together. That's one of the most important things that I've learned over time is you treat people like you want to be treated. You take care of that, and
right.
that will serve you well. That'll serve you well.
This is one of the key takeaways that I got out of the advanced course, which for me was still yesterday, comparatively speaking, was we had a Master of Guns come talk to us, and he was a close friend and mentor to one of the other students that was in my small section, my small platoon. And he challenged us to grow your community, to extend or expand your sphere of influence, but to be the type of influence that was going to be a team builder. And I think what you were referring to touches on that considerably. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, when you first heard about this podcast, what were your initial reactions to it, and where do you see the place for these types of projects or platforms in helping to kind of do just that, if at all?
Well, so we went back in history a bit before any of this kind of stuff was possible to reach out to a wide audience, right? A lot of times you hear something hearsay or I don't know if that's exactly what they said. This allows you to kind of capture that little snapshot in time and actually hear inflection and things like that. It's one of the things that was very important to me. It always has been, you can text something, right, and read it one way, or you can actually hear someone's voice and hear the inflection, and if they have, you can hear if they're in distress. You can hear all that stuff just by listening to their voice. It's a really cool thing to do with this type of form. You're not just reading it. You can read something a couple different ways. You can do all that, but I think this is really cool to just, I had no idea what to expect when we sat down here, but we just kind of rolled right into it. You didn't
even know we started recording.
Yeah, I kind of figured it out after a bit, but I mean, yeah, it's just kind of a relaxing thing, just talking, two guys talking, and if people can benefit from the stuff I've said, then that's all good, but it reaches a much wider audience than me just talking to you or you conveying that to somebody else, or people that I've worked with over the years, saying, oh yeah, this is what kind of he thinks about or whatever. Hey, I'm just telling you, over the little bit of topics that we've talked about, and no, I like it.
That was one of the key attributes about this that I wanted to leverage was taking advantage of my placement and access to guys like you, guys like Scoggins, guys like Simmons. The list goes on to Carter, all these individuals, and sitting down as colleagues, as professionals, as brothers, to kind of pick their brain in a way that a sergeant or a corporal wouldn't be able to. Some of the feedback that I've gotten from Marines that are maybe outside of the community doing a special duty assignment or kind of on the fence about re-enlistment has been overwhelmingly positive. And the other thing is trying to carefully plan out how we extend beyond just the OccFld and what type of key individuals we should look to bring in to kind of widen the circle. Who would you recommend as a future guest or someone you'd like to hear kind of their take on leadership, professional development, the future operational environment, things of that nature?
I mean, I like that I'm the first warrant officer. I think you bring a couple more of us in there and you just kind of keep branching it out. It just depends on what kind of forum you want. Maybe you want a competent OPSO to come in and talk with you. That's had a little bit of
as opposed to an incompetent one.
That's absolutely correct. And we've all worked for those folks. You know what I mean? But someone that kind of has a perspective from that side of the fence, possibly a battalion commander or former battalion commander, and kind of get the perspective on that, I think would be good. And then you could start looking at the higher headquarters kind of stuff. Where does this fit in? But that's kind of complex right now. Maybe for your audience that you have, get this down, get this part down, and then expand to some of those kind of things. I think that'd be good. I think
I've kind of identified as my target population being like E3 to E7.
Yeah.
But the E8s and some of the E9s have been very...
Those are your most critical group, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll hear about it for years. I remember when you did that podcast. Came off sounding like an ass. Yeah, whatever.
So kind of circling back to like Chief Warrant Officer selection, Chief Warrant Officer professional development. What goes into the calculus of the Chief Warrant Officer slate?
So I work with the monitor, right? And we basically look at everybody's, the two of us. Me first, I look at, where people are assigned, what schools they have. I can see all that stuff. And, even down to their fit reps, how they've done in their current job position. So if you're thinking you're going to get orders to like Germany and stuff like that, or Denver, and you haven't done certain prerequisites to go there, you need to knock out those things. So we're working on a nice roadmap, kind of like what the enlisted folks do, and it lays out jobs that you're expected to do before you move to the next level. There's a lot more of that work that has to be done because we've got the MiGs standing up now, and the MLGs are going to have structure. So basically, it's a weird talent management, but our field isn't huge right now. You got like mid 50s as far as numbers go. When that starts getting up there, I start losing visibility on who some of these folks are. Like a lot of the new warrant officers, I really don't know them, nor do they know me. You know what I mean? As far as I know, that's when the little birds and things like that out there really help me to figure out, hey, is this guy ready for an independent duty assignment? Is this a person that needs to be like an XO at a cryptologic support battalion, or is this somebody that shows passion in doing like project officer stuff? And then just talking to everybody, what do they want to do? So that's what goes into it. Mostly like personal interaction and people calling me because I try to be pretty accessible, and just seeing if they're filling me full of bullshit or not by their fitness reports that I work with the monitor to do, and then we just cut orders. And then family factors into that, making sure if they have exceptional family members or anything like that all those considerations are being met for geographic location. All that stuff plays into it. I never thought it'd be that complex. And when somebody said, hey, you're going to be the 2600 OccFld manager, that portion of assignments, it seriously occupies, maybe a solid week out of everything I do throughout the year. It's a very small portion. You got the modernization efforts and things like that we're really, those are the things we work on. What is an electronic warfare officer in the MAGTF? Those are the things we work with. What equipment, what training, all that stuff. That's all the things you kind of focus on at headquarters, not just what the slate is. And it's funny because if you don't work with these people that have an idea of what you do at headquarters, it's always, oh, that guy's not, he doesn't know what he's doing, or it's the good idea fairy or whatever. It's just somebody that just kind of is up there occupying space. Well, I assure you it is not. And if I hear that, I'd love to get somebody orders cut up to headquarters. Because it's just, it is because of the sandblast.
Talk that shit now.
Yeah, it's a sandblast with a little bit of water mixed in. But it's fun. We've got a great crew up there. I actually enjoy going to work because it's something that's exciting. It's beneficial to the community. And it's just fun. I keep things as light as I can. We work with a lot of very competent people up there, so jokes are pretty prevalent and telling story and stuff. So that's always fun.
So let me ask you, when we were here last, I walked up with Scoggins and Simmons, and I'd never met you before, and I see this giant lumbering of a man, and this will be the third Game of Thrones reference. You look like the Mountain, and we had a let's say a roundabout conversation. We kind of touched on it, and then eventually we kind of dove in deeper about finding that balance with regard to our professional duties and our professional life and our responsibilities and obligations as fathers and husbands, right? With the understanding that, and I had not taken that road trip with Scoggins and Simmons at that point in time yet, but that we all struggle with that balance.
Yeah.
In varying degrees, and there's ebbs and flows. There's sometimes where we're getting it right, we're hitting all the marks, and sometimes when we don't, and things start to come off the rails. I've got a 16-year-old son and an 11-year-old son. I think you mentioned your oldest is in his 20s.
He's about to turn 20. Yeah.
Okay. And so from your perspective, and the longevity of time that you've been in uniform, how have you managed that? And what TTPs would you highlight as being best practices for those coming up behind us?
So the part where you surround yourself by people that aren't going to bring you down, that's very important. And I've had all kinds of friends throughout the years and coworkers, and you can see the ones that are going to be life building and the ones that are going to tear you down. If you see somebody that's kind of sketchy at work, you got to wonder about their home life, right? And do you want to associate with that kind of stuff? I've just kind of distanced myself from a lot of that over the years. My faith in God helps me out a lot, because that you can't expect to get taught that from the Marine Corps' perspective. So that's something you have to take on your own. And if you make that the center of your life, that will help you out on the home front tremendously, to give you a lot of tools to cope with just about any situation. So personally, that you asked, that's what helps me out. My wife being someone that's been married to me for over 22 years is just amazingly understanding of the stresses that we have, and when you're not home, being able to cover the home front there when you have family needs and things like that, or even if you take back on someone that you thought was going to leave you as an empty nester, and now they're back home, and being able to cover that down when there's medical things going on, that's important, to be able to count on somebody on the home front that knows full well that you're honest and faithful when you're not there. You know what I mean? So you can keep each other in check, but faith in God, man, that's my center.
What does Mrs. Musch do?
So really cool. She was a school teacher for as long as I'd been in the Marines, maybe a year longer. So she was a school teacher, elementary school teacher, for 25, 26 years. We were grading papers on the bed, and she's just like, "Oh, this just is so much stuff." And I was like, "This really sucks." And I was like, just grading just countless papers. And I was like, "What is this, like a month's worth of homework?" And she's like, "No, it's just this week." And it was like Wednesday, I think. I was like, "Oh my gosh." So anyway, that started in this whole conversation of having a fun job, doing something you enjoy or whatever. So we just really had a heart-to-heart, and it started with that. And she took that and ran. But one of the questions I asked her is, what did you see yourself doing when you were younger? What did you want to do? What was your passion? And she goes, "I always thought I'd have a fun job, like be a flight attendant or something like that." And she threw out flight attendant. I was like, "You should do that. You should try it. I've heard you say it more than one time. You should actually try to be a flight attendant. Plus, when we retire, we can fly everywhere for free, and it'd be an awesome job to have. So no kidding, she went and she tried out with like Delta and American Airlines, US Air before they merged, and she got asked to come work for both those companies, and the only problem was they could not tell her where she would be home based. It was just completely random, so that just didn't work out for our family plan. But then she got called from Southwest. Now, mind you, when she went to these other interviews with these bigger airlines, Delta and American, she went in there and there were several hundred people being interviewed, and they basically weed through a couple, and there might be a dozen left. So she thought it was going to be something like that when she went into the Southwest interview, and she literally called me and she goes, "I think I'm lost. I'm where I think I'm supposed to be, and there's like nobody here." And I was like, "Well, are you early?" And she goes, "I'm a little bit early." I said, "Just hang out there for a second. Make sure you call the points of contact." Anyway, so a couple of folks came out. They're like, "Mrs. Musch, please come in." And she was the only one. And they'd basically already hired her based off of her video interviews and stuff like that. So she got hired by Southwest, and she works for Southwest Airlines and absolutely loves it. Super cool job, very flexible, and really cool benefits. And they fly to Hawaii now, or will be soon.
So that bodes well for retirement, right?
Yeah.
So my wife's a career teacher. She's stuck through it over the years. A couple of forays outside of the educational arena. When we were in the embassy in the Dominican Republic, she was the community liaison officer there with the country team. Worked very closely with the Marines from MSG and with the ambassador. She loved it. But when we got back to reality, so to speak, outside of the embassy, got back into San Antonio, she got back into education. She's teaching now on base at Okinawa. On Kadena.
So DOD teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so this is her second time working. So DODS and DODEA are two separate entities, DODEA overseas. And I think there's talk right now of merging them because they're not administered equally. And so I think that's one of the things that has come under scrutiny, and there's a lot of turmoil about that. But one of the interesting aspects of her teaching on base overseas as a dependent is she's not compensated equally like the other DODEA employees. So she doesn't get housing allowance like they do. She doesn't get the morale trip back like they do. Household goods shipment is not the same. They get periodic shipments so they can continue to bring household goods in from the U.S. She doesn't rate that. There's a lot of I guess there's kind of the easiest way to classify it is there's a caste system.
Yeah.
I mean, she's gainfully employed and we're grateful for that, but there's some divisions, right, with regard to how pay and benefits are doled out. And of course, the union that is very active down there. That's one of the areas that they won't get involved in. They won't touch that because it kind of pits one group against the other.
Sure.
But beyond that, she still enjoys teaching. Now she's serving as an English as a second language instructor. So she does pull out services for some of these kids, half American, half Korean, half American, half Japanese, and other nationalities. And so she's got small groups, and she has to do lesson plans, but not to the same level and detail as a normal, I guess, line company teacher would have to throw that education and military mix into the pot. But you're right. I mean, I've helped her set up I don't know how many classrooms, decorations.
A lot of that stuff's out of pocket.
Yeah, man. And I was listening to a newscast this morning when I was grabbing coffee for the group about North Carolina teachers protesting and wanting additional funding and pay raises and whatnot. And it kind of harkens back to some of the problems that that we identify in a sessions training stem from the
Yes.
educational system.
I totally agree.
And why is there not a I guess more value placed upon that where the rubber meets the road in those teachers as in the U.S.?
Well, I would offer this is that just in my experience with her teaching in California and different places like that is I think it's geographically different on the teaching system, like the state testing and all that mess that they have to do. So they basically wind up teaching the test. So what knowledge does the student actually retain? I think there's some differences in political views on how that stuff is entered in, and taking God out of the classroom. That's not okay with me. And that's just my opinion. But I think that stems a lot of the issues we have now. Is just the politically correctness of everything, and people not wanting to, touch on the sensitive subjects, right? So I think that's part of it as well.
So from a man training equipment perspective, what implications do you think that the current educational system have or impact upon how we conduct training in the Marine Corps? And when we start talking about things like persistent learning environment and apps and other tools, blended learning models for training, do you see the Marine Corps as being agile enough or responsive enough to be able to incorporate some of those TTPs into our training models?
I do. With the acquisition background, I can't help but think about some of these like smart boards and different things that we've had over time. Really nice things. And Marines break stuff. So it's like how much, it's true. I mean, it's like how much money do you put into that? And that be the focus when you can get teaching across in different methods. And if you teach strong concepts, it doesn't really matter what box you're using to do that. I think there's a good mix of that where it's cost effective, right? Because in the long run, the money's going to get spent to buy new weapons, not cool computers with persistent learning environments and things like that. At least not proliferated into what we do. So there has to be a good mix of that. We talked last week and this week about there were some opinions on taking the programs of record out of the classroom. I disagree with that strongly because that's just another piece that we go back and forth on it all the time. And I will tell you with my 30 plus years of experience that if you're teaching on what you're going to use, that's probably the most important, regardless if it's the latest and greatest, because you'll figure out a way to make that work or how to influence getting that updated. And that's when I was talking about requirements and things like that earlier. Right. I think it all kind of goes hand in hand. I've seen some of the persistent learning environments, and yes, I play the Xbox One X and enjoy that and gamification of things, and I think there's a mix of that. But I know for a fact that all that stuff is really expensive, and it has to be sustained. So we can talk about persistent learning or having a live environment, and then we can get into those more sensitive things we've talked about. It's like, what is the perception of having all that, and what is the desired outcome? I can tell you that we can throw all kinds of money at it, but it might not have the desired outcome that everybody thinks, this is going to fix that. I will tell you, it will not fix a learning problem unless you figure out the things that need to be taught,
right,
regardless of the media that they're taught in. And then I always make fun when I was the cadre OIC out in Hawaii. You can't teach someone to care,
So, but how do you transfer that attitude from instructor or cadre or mentor to?
Just have to make it interesting, and I do. You've witnessed this. I try to balance, seriousness with a bit of humor, right? And I think for me, that's my style. It works for me. And not everybody's as funny as I am. But anyway, the method that you teach, you have to know everybody's individual learning style, right? So that's part of the thing that, just because you learned a certain way doesn't mean that works for everybody. So, I mean, you have to get down to the individual on how they learn or what their passion is. That's really, really challenging to do. I used to take the guys in the cadre, all the sergeants and corporals that worked in there at the time, and every Friday I made it a point to hit at least 5 of them and just kind of feel and get a feel for what they were going through in their life. What's going on with you, and that's you can kind of pyramid that down, but that's the kind of stuff that we need to be doing. Basic leadership stuff is understanding what your people are going through, and that will help every aspect of the learning environment, is just getting a real understanding of people's personal situations, and that if they're not focused on there's something going on the home front, guess what? Their attention is going to be better served in the classroom. So I don't think you're going to fix that with just my opinion again. I don't think you're going to fix that with any kind of cool learning environment. Yeah, it'll be neat to go into classroom and stuff and maybe pique some interest, but after a while, somebody will complain about that learning environment. It's like, oh, this thing crashes all the time, or what if it just doesn't do this one thing, or whatever. There'll always be something that doesn't quite meet it. You know what I mean? You'll always be chasing that. And you're talking about somebody, like I said, started off doing graph paper, taping it together to learn how to do, cryptanalysis and decryption. So, I was excited when we got calculators to do stuff like that, and people make fun of me like, what, did you go to school and use an abacus? It's like, well, maybe, but do you even know how to use that? You know what I mean?
Probably not.
Right. So I do.
So kind of switching gears a little bit, what is Jim Musch reading? What's on your nightstand right now?
So I'm kind of behind a little bit. So I was getting a lot of pressure from Sam and Scoggins to read Ready Player One. And,
really?
Yeah. So they were like, oh, you got to read this. Like, you totally get it. It's all about stuff from growing up in the 80s and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I was in my teens in the 80s, but we'll give that a read. So I'm actually really interested in that, because it does have a lot of stuff dating back to
those Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's just really cool. And I did see the movie ahead of time, and the book's just not the same. It's not the same as that. And then the Bible. So there you go. Okay.
So you said you have an Xbox One X. What games do you prefer?
I mostly like the driving stuff, like the Forza.
Do you have the steering wheel with the gas and the brake? Or you just drive with the controller?
That would be awesome, but I think I might get in trouble for that.
In trouble how?
Oh, it's just the home front. You spent how much on a steering wheel? That's all right. Yeah. These things just give me a tone.
Yeah, it was somebody. We got a question from a specific crowd.
Oh, okay.
I'll circle back to that later. So you mentioned the Bible and God several times. Was religion always a big portion of your life, and was it something that you've adopted later? How was it your developmental process growing up, and what changed?
So I grew up Lutheran, and you can call it the pre-Easter Lutheran. So you'd go to church like several weeks before Easter, and then when you had family and friends come to visit, you weren't a stranger when you walked into the church, right? So people knew you. So that's probably being a bit on the funny side, but I don't remember that being a really prevalent thing, or at least my focus wasn't on that growing up, and it was very regimented, and God was always a part of my life, but it wasn't the center. And wasn't until, my wife and I having, a lot of young marital issues when we first got married, and then just kind of being like, well, why isn't she doing what I say, or why isn't, it just doesn't work that way. And until you're like equally yoked, she was very drawn to the church, and she helped me tremendously with my faith and get me centered. Because I was just kind of wild and crazy, and I was like, why am I married to this beautiful woman that just doesn't listen to what I say, and it needs to be, I'm the man, and it just that's just not a good way to go about your life.
Is that what growing up in your family home was like?
My parents to listen to this blog, but no, I mean, I wasn't really. I mean, my dad was very successful and stuff, but my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and that's just kind of the way we grew up. And there were specific work roles that were very well defined, and
your wife wasn't having any of that?
No, not that. It's just it was like, well, there was more discussion, and I probably have opened up a lot more in the last like 10 years than I ever have, because there wasn't a lot of communication when I was growing up. If you had problems, you basically had to figure it out yourself. And that did serve me well when I first, joined the Marine Corps. But there wasn't a lot of, detail work on how to become a man, in my household. It was more like, hey, don't do that. That's hot. Don't touch this. And these are the things, you do. And you basically figure it out yourself. So that's why I'm like so problem solving oriented, I think. But so it's helped me in that aspect, but not necessarily on the relationship side, because everybody's different, right? So just having a compassion or a sense for my wife Shannon is helping me, and I'm still learning. We've been married for 22 years, but I'm still learning. Right? I still aggravate the crap out of her, and likewise on the other side. But right. She'll always be there.
So I'm curious, because the length of time that you've been in the Marine Corps, and I can honestly say you've probably seen a shift in our willingness to discuss some of those intangible things. And I want to say it was Krulak who instituted the core values as a leveling function at boot camp to kind of give everybody a baseline for values and needs, right? And then when I came in 99, we had senior drill instructors taking off their covers and talking to us like men, a school circle, and then now we're at the point where emotional intelligence is one of those key leadership attributes that we're identifying as qualities and characteristics that are necessary for involved and responsive leadership. With the number of suicides that take place that we contend with in the Marine Corps and some of these other leadership challenges, where we're advocating and encouraging a different mindset from our leaders than we ever have before. What's your perspective on that, and has that informed or altered your approach to the home life outside of uniform?
Absolutely, and I mentioned that just having an understanding of what everybody's going through, right? As far as the learning environment, absolutely transcends throughout everything, right? Because you can come across as this big bad Marine, and as soon as you walk through that door threshold at your house, unless your spouse is a military member or just very direct, that's going to be a very challenging thing. So I've had to balance that over time, big time. I cherish the little bit of time it takes me to drive home, or the commute. It's time to decompress or just kind of wash that off. And I used to do this whole thing where I'd get home and I'd just take a shower to wash work off, and just like a physical thing of like just cleansing off the day and transforming back into the husband that is Jim Musch. But having to do those type of things and just being able to relate to my wife in a more compassionate way has served me extremely well, and not being such an asshole, you know.
So, since you brought it up several times, a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Are you a huge George R. R. Martin nerd, or is it something you just kind of started watching the TV series, and like how deep into it have you gotten?
I would say that I did not start watching that until 2015. So several seasons had already gone by, so I don't remember where we picked up, but I remember seeing a commercial. It's like, man, everybody's telling me about this show, and I need to kind of check it out. And I saw like an awards thing, and they had just like slayed it for winning all these awards. And then I saw some like Tonight Show, and the gal walked on there, and she had this dragon on her shoulder. It was just hilarious. So I was like, all right, we could break this down and see what this show's about. So I started watching it, and literally my wife and I binge watched that for like, I think I even took a couple days of leave, and we watched back to back to back.
You took leave to watch,
and we watched the entire thing in like one sitting.
So how many seasons were released at the time?
It was at least 5. What do we?
Wow.
It was like 5 or 6 seasons. We blazed through that whole thing, and it was awesome. And then I think we've watched it again since the last season came out, and probably do it again. But yeah, that is a very well done series, very, very well done. But don't let your kids watch it, because it's not appropriate for youngsters.
So we had to make that decision as a family, because my wife and I, both being avid readers, we've always had the practice of, we'll never tell the boys no about a book. And so Enrique, my oldest, the 16-year-old, asked a couple of years ago, I think he was 14, can I watch a Game of Thrones? And I said, no. He said, well, can I read the book? So he cornered us. So I was, yes, you can read the book. And my wife was like, well, she said, I don't know if I agree with that. And I said, well, have you read the book? She hadn't. It's not her thing. High fantasy or sword and sorcery aren't her
Sure.
thing. And I said, I will say that in the book, a lot of the visceral details that are present in the TV series aren't there. They will allude to certain things,
Yeah.
but it won't be the same level of detail. But as a father with the 14-year-old, I was willing to make the concession that if you read the book, you can watch the series, watch it with me.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, I don't know if I agree with that, but eventually she capitulated and kind of agreed to let it happen. So he's read the books. We've watched the series together, and talked about it. And he understands now, because he's a history buff, and he's as much a reader as his mother and father, and the implications of or the influences that George R. R. Martin took, and particularly with the War of the Roses. So let me ask you, if House Musch had a sigil, what would it be?
I like the whole Winterfell thing. I really do.
But no. So you'd be subbed underneath.
Yeah, right.
Them, but what would be on your own shield? Boy,
I don't know. I've never even thought of that, because I like the wolf. I don't know. I'd have to think about that more. Be some type of.
Would it be a skull with headphones on it?
I doubt that.
Lightning bolts and ones and zeros trailing off into the distance. No.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to get back with you, man. I don't know what that one would be.
Okay. So I think I mentioned it in conversation today to the group. I had a requirement to teach critical thinking that was thrust upon us by the CTSTS and line items, and one of the vectors that I chose to kind of branch off of outside of what we were normally doing from a practical application standpoint in the classroom was to develop a game for training right? And I wanted to teach the young Marines how to think like violent non-state actors, and the end result was a video game called Sicario, where you and I with two separate workstations or on the same one, we just hotbox and rotate on hot seat on the computer. We have control of our own organization, and we compete against each other with imperfect information, and the Marines loved it. But the part of the process was we had to kind of get down into the weeds and mechanics of game design, and one of the easiest ways to do that was to use board games. And one of the board games that we picked up was a Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a board game out there, and I will caution you that it can take a good while, especially when you go through your first playthrough and you're trying to understand the mechanics of it. But it is a lot of fun, and we've hosted several board game nights with that game in particular. But you've kind of got to prep the battle space, so to speak, with the different players. And I've also kind of partnered people up so that they would get to confer on their strategy and their tactics, because the key houses are House Baratheon, House Martell, the House Stark, House Lannister, I think House Greyjoy, and what's the sixth one? House Baratheon. Did I say that already?
Yeah.
And so you start off in your first few moves. There's guys that play this game all the time, so they've kind of scripted out. If you're playing House Baratheon, you've got 3 key plays that you can take off on. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. And if you're House Stark, same thing applies and whatnot. But the real game is the human game that's being played amongst the players, and really trying to establish those alliances and whatnot. I would encourage you to.
Sounds like Axis and Allies.
So it is kind of like Axis and Allies. It's more like the game Diplomacy, which is a little bit more cerebral. It's risk on a whole other level. I think Axis and Allies is a good analogy. There's another game called Ikusa that's set in feudal Japan that is very similar, but the amount of tension and conflict that takes place over the course of the game can get very heated. I will caution you, but definitely worth looking into. If you've already bought into the experience. With regard to the TV show, I would recommend giving the board game a look. At Risk, there's a version of Risk that is, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a dumbed down version of the Game of Thrones board game, but it's not as, I guess, deep or complex as far as board games go, because you can go off the deep end on board games. But we use the board games as models that we could kind of pick and pull from with regard to combat resolution, and trying to establish an environment where you don't have all the information laid out in front of you. You might not know how many troops are in a particular area, so kind of like a combination of stratego and risk, right? And trying to kind of conceal what information is available to you. But I got some questions coming in, and I wanted to ask you from the crowd. This is from none other than John Scoggins.
Oh.
He's asking me to elicit from you the pull my finger story.
Okay, so yeah, it is pretty funny. All right, so my son, I can't remember how old he was, but just talking age, right? And we're down on the floor, like building Legos, and just leave it up to Marines. If anything left alone for a while, the conversation will go to the topic we're about to hit on. But anyway, so we're building Legos, and I know for a fact that I had just made like a whole bowl of beans and franks or something like that, and I'm sitting there, and Nathaniel, man, he must have been like 3 max, and building Legos, and I was just like, I started doubling over, and I was like, oh, my stomach hurts. My stomach hurts so bad. And he, like, in a panic, he's like, Daddy, are you okay? Are you okay? He's like up, like hovering over me, like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I think just my stomach is killing me. And he's like, do you need me to pull your finger? So I did. I held my finger out, and he pulled it, and I reacted appropriately, and he's just like, oh jeez. He runs back, and he like puts his hands on his knees, and he's like bending over, and his 3-year-old looks at me and he goes, what are you trying to kill me? So that's the pull my finger story. I'm sure Scoggins is laughing.
So he's got another question on a different aspect. What's the relationship between the chief warrant officer and the commander?
So that is, so the senior warrant officer is your senior advisor, taking into account all the stuff that he's talked and compiled, from the rest of his staff. You should be able to advise him on his decisions. So that is your role, and that is no different than the role of your senior enlisted. So you're just another tool in the toolbox for that commander.
Okay. From your position, how can the chief warrant officer community ensure that they're being utilized correctly?
Boy, stand up. I'll probably get a lot of phone calls about this later, but I think right now, and unfortunately, so many things are personality driven. We have some very, very strong warrant officers, and we have some ones that just kind of sit on their hands and just wait to get told things. The problem we have is people not being able to stand up and say, hey, this is my job, you're right in my lane. And yes, I do have the benefit of being 6'8" and also studying martial arts for the longest time.
Krav Maga, right?
That's right.
If I remember correctly.
But I've a little let down recently because I can't be everywhere and fix everything, or others that have strong personalities can't be everywhere and fix everything, and I'm not currently in those situations where I'm expecting a little more, but I feel that if you understand what you're responsible for, it's pretty easy to get that job. You know what I mean? It's pretty easy to walk in and say, all right, this is what we're doing, this is how, and this is why, because of these rules. I just don't think we have enough people that understand the rules right now. So it's easy for me to say that while we're discussing it because I'm not out there, but I feel that we could step it up a bit.
Okay. Where does Jim Musch get his news?
Shoot, it's a combination of things. I actually started watching the local news again because you pretty much hear most of the national stuff just being at work, right? So I have news feeds coming into my phone when I'm actually not at work, and I'll have Fox News on my desktop and things like that. So. But then I go home and I read news. I don't take things on Facebook or social media too seriously because it's like some of those, if you read the source on some of those headlines, it's like, oh yeah, that's just ridiculous. But
right.
A lot of people will take that and run. So I've kind of thrown back off of the social media piece of that, and then having a strong opinion. I don't need someone to influence my worldview. So, it is just that news. It's not always fact, which is important to be able to differentiate, Yeah, that's about it.
So, if not for the Marines, what would Jim Musch be?
What would I be? I would be a professional mechanic restoring cars right now. And
what kind of cars do you prefer?
So I've had a lot of cars. In fact, I just bought a new truck. But
What year?
2018 Ford F-150. But before that, like my first car was a Dodge Charger, and
What year?
That was a 71 RT. I've had
You're like 15, 16 years old.
I've had 15 when I was able to drive it. I had a 70 Charger. I had a 69 Camaro. I've had six.
Can you fit in those things?
Yeah, 6 Fox body Mustangs.
You've had 6 Fox body Mustangs.
Yep. I had a Trans Am, a 96 Trans Am. I've had just talking the cool cars, because I've had some other ones that have not even earned honorable mentions, right? But a couple of BMWs. I had an M3. Currently have a E550 Mercedes, a couple of them, and my truck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is your daily driver, or
my truck?
Okay.
My truck is. But I like old stuff. I like old trucks. Working on them. I like old cars, muscle cars. I immensely miss my 69 Camaro and my 70 Charger. So if I had it to do over again, I would have kept those and slept in a box or something. But I miss both of those cars, and to get one like I had would cost me more than what my truck cost me.
Wow.
I just bought.
My first vehicle was a 1965 GMC step-side pickup.
Yeah, bet you wish you still had it.
I do.
But do you still have it?
No, I do wish I still had it, and I wish I did. I didn't take care of it. I didn't understand the value of something like that when it was in my possession. But I think when it's all said and done, I've avoided the Harley bug.
Yeah, I'm too big for a bike, I think.
But I think a 59 Apache,
Nice.
fleet side, is probably.
I know where you can get one of those.
I don't want to know.
Okay.
Living in Okie, it's okay, because I've there's no motivation or even consideration given to that right now. I'm driving a little Honda Spike, getting back and forth.
That's what you do in Okinawa.
Yeah.
But
DC Motors.
I've always enjoyed just fixing things and like tearing it apart and making trying to figure out how it all worked. And auto mechanics, mostly the stuff pre sensor era type mechanical stuff and engines and stuff has always been something I really like to do. And then making it work again. If something's broken, like tearing it apart and fixing it and making it run or making it pretty again or whatever. It's always like a real deep sense of satisfaction with that. I don't know if I could do that as an occupation, like fix a car and then sell it to somebody. It'd be more like fixing a car and then you go over here in my 25 car garage or something like that. But I'm being half joking. I'm sure I wouldn't want to own all the minivans that would come through the door to get fixed and all that. But the cool cars, definitely that.
So what's your weak suit? What do you suck at?
What do I suck at? Lately, the physical side of being a Marine is starting to catch up with me a lot. And as you know, I'm going in like next week for my my second hip surgery. That is probably the biggest thing that's kind of weighing on me right now is not being able to do certain things that I've always been able to do. So the physical side of getting old and just having a lot of wear and tear, I suck at that now because I'm just restricted on what I can do right now. So, the days of playing softball and, crushing the basketball and stuff like that, I can't do those things anymore. So that kind of weighs on me a lot. My physical stuff is what I suck at now. There's going to be a point where, we'll see how this medical board, or not the medical board, but how this surgery goes, and then the board after that goes to how much longer I'm doing this.
Okay.
So that's something that weighs on me a lot is just being the all Marines Marine, right? And people joke around, they're like, oh, you're CW5, you don't have to do that. And it's like, well, I still want to do that. That's still part of my job.
Yeah.
That's still.
After so many years, it just becomes part of your genetic makeup, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just something you do, and the enjoyment out of it, that you get from running, and especially up at headquarters, you get to run around all the monuments and all that stuff. It's really awesome. So I miss that, and it sucks. So we'll see how this goes and how my recovery is, and see if I can stop sucking at all my physical stuff. So
I've limited the amount of time that I put on the road for running, getting my cardio in other ways, swinging a kettlebell, training jiu-jitsu, and it's taken less of an impact on my body than just getting out there and pounding the pavement. And that's kind of been my adaptation into my mid-40s, and it's working for me so far. I've not seen a significant decrease in my performance physically over the years. But I've had two of the Marines that you work with on my podcast, Master Sergeant John Scoggins and Master Sergeant Sam Carter, and they've given me some questions for you. Would you offer up any questions that you would have liked me to have asked them?
Yeah.
That maybe I could use in a future podcast with either of those guys.
Yeah.
Even Kevin Simmons too, because I think he was one of yours. Sean Acal was another one. I just recently did an episode with him.
Yeah, I admire all those guys, and I've worked really closely with all of them. Multiple times at Radio Battalion with Kevin and Scoggins. Unfortunately, up until now, I didn't really know him other than when he was at Radbin as a young Marine, and then now as a senior Marine is really cool. And then Sam, I've pretty much known since he converted. I just for me to know John is retiring after working with him as closely as we have. It's like, make sure you're close enough to where we can access your brilliance still, because he's going to be missed. Kevin Simmons, I understand all the family situation stuff and staying in Hawaii. That worked out perfectly. So he's always going to be the contact in Hawaii, and Sean's going to be around for a while, and Sam's going to be around for a while. But no, I don't have any questions other than make sure we all stay in contact, and keep mutually supporting even when we're done wearing the uniform. So I'd love to continue working with those guys, and I might have an in with that, so they should keep in contact.
Okay, so I think I asked you already if you listen to podcasts, and you said you're kind of starting to get into it, but not wholeheartedly. I would offer up for consideration the Jocko Willink podcast. It's a retired naval officer, Navy SEAL. It's very, very disciplinarian. Very, the word I'm looking for is Spartan, laconic in the way in which he's approached it. I've tried to take a little bit more, relaxed atmosphere or environment with regard to the types of conversations we get into. But do you think you'll listen to this episode?
Probably. It's been so relaxing. We just kind of free flowing. I like that. Mostly just because I want to hear what my voice sounds like. No, not really. I just want to kind of see if I answered all your questions. I think I kind of went tangent on a couple, but hopefully you got to the meat of who I am and what my opinions are mostly. But yeah, I'm going to go back and listen to Scoggins and Carter's stuff, and again, I'll listen to Sam's again, and then I need to listen to Kevin's and everybody else. So yeah, I'll probably go back and listen to everybody's and see what it's all about. But there you are.
Who are you going to forward this to?
I don't know. My wife, I'm sure, would want to hear it. Probably should be the first one. I don't know.
Who'd play Jim Musch in a movie?
The Mountain. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. There was what's the guy that somebody mistaked me for? Rollins, the singer guy.
Henry Rollins?
Henry Rollins, yeah. Somebody's like, oh, that's totally you. And I was like, I don't think that looks anything like me. But I've heard that from multiple people several times. So I guess that guy.
So this many years in uniform, what's been your favorite duty station and why?
Favorite duty station? Job-wise or location?
You tell me.
Job-wise, I would say, multiple tours in Hawaii have been really cool, and just having the opportunity to do several different things. I think being a platoon commander was probably one of the coolest things I did. Just that whole, making sure you have it down, like being able to do a frago of all that, making sure all your folks go out and come back safely, getting all the intel down to the action, like seeing everything you trained for actually come and do it for real. We had some of the first special capability when I was over there, and just doing that kind of stuff was awesome. Working in Denver right after that was awesome, but I will tell you that was super straining on my marriage, to the point where I almost lost her, and that's where that balance of both comes into play, because I was at work all the time, and the only thing I did when I was at home was just go to sleep. And other than that, I was at the command and working on the watch floor there in Denver. But the job was really cool, and I enjoyed that time. I enjoyed my time down at McKiss, just working with a bunch of professionals down there.
What years were you there?
Just McKiss.
Mm-hmm.
So I got there in 13 and left there in December of 15. And I've been up at headquarters since then.
I think I just left Goodfellow when you went to McKiss.
Yeah. I pretty much enjoyed all my time. Location-wise, it hands down would be Hawaii. And just enjoyed and made the most of every tour. I'm enjoying the tour up at headquarters right now. We have a really nice place to live, and the commute's not so bad. So once you take the commute out, headquarters is really just another place to get stuff done, and probably a lot of the most influential stuff starts from there anyway. So I enjoy my time up there.
So if Sammy Castro invented a time machine, and I could transport Chief Warrant Officer 5 Musch to the past to sit you down at a smoke pit with young Sergeant Musch, what would you tell him? I'll give you 2 hours.
Yeah. So you would have to transport back to like anywhere between the time I was a sergeant, so 91, right, all the way up to when I got promoted to staff sergeant in 99. So imagine that.
So there's two. Yeah, exactly. So I asked the question with that taken into consideration that there's two different sergeants there.
I would take a lot of the stuff that I just told you that I had to learn from that point till now, and make sure I play this podcast for them. Literally like
listen to this.
Yeah, hey, listen to this. This is the kind of stuff you're going to experience, the compassion, the focus on family that we touched on. Make sure the center of your life is Christ for me, work with people, not for them, and don't have people working for you, but with you. Those are very important lessons. Throttle
because you
back.
didn't have that all the way. You learned that.
No, throttle back on the whole, like, super animated right off the bat. I always used to joke around. It's like when you lose your cool, you're not cool, right? Could you imagine, like, I'm sure you've worked at some point in time for the leader that just goes flying off the handle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
And the credibility goes out the window almost instantaneously. Man, I wish this guy would just draw it back a little bit. Yeah, it's bad, but it's not that bad or something. But being able to I don't know, I know the things that will really animate me, and it's really nothing that I deal with in the Marine Corps right now at present would get me to where I would be completely animated. Now, John Scoggins and Sam Carter might beg to differ a little bit, but at the same time, it's usually just us when I'm passionate about something or aggravated, and never at those guys. It's always external, and just temperament and just having a cool head will get you very, 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 very far in life, dealing with other Marines, and just having a cool head to where you can make sound, strong decisions, because the Sergeant Musch isn't making the decisions at the level that you'd be required to make, like where I'm at now. And could you imagine just being completely off the handle all the time? Nobody would listen to a word I said, nor would anybody want to hear or sit down this long in a podcast listen to me if they knew I was just some freaking huge hothead, so
right.
That is one thing that a lot of Marines struggle with, is temper. So I did, and I got help for it, and it helps me now dealing with every facet of my life, is just having a cool head. So that's what I would tell that young sergeant.
So you taught me something probably without even realizing it, when we were outside your hotel room last time we were here in San Angelo, and we were discussing some of the TTPs that you recently acquired or had just been recently reinforced with you. As we were sitting there talking, and you mentioned the importance of body language in conversation, in heartfelt conversation with people you care about. And although I had known you for a few minutes personally, or in person rather, as I was listening to you talk, I had my arms folded. Yeah. And you walked over to me and you put your hand on my shoulder, and you gently forced me to unfold my arms, and you made the comment about why it was important to listen completely to someone when they're sharing their experiences or their current circumstances with you, and I've taken that and run with it. But could you kind of highlight or just kind of gloss over why that's so important to you now at this stage of the game?
Yeah, especially when you're passionate about a topic, right? And I can't remember exactly what we're talking about. But
we're talking about family.
Family, and there's something that a lot of people get emotional about, and I'm confident we did at that point in time with others that were there. But when you're closed off to something, you're not really listening. You're pretty much set, and you can take that from watching a small child. When you say no or something like that, what do? They'll pout. Not that you were pouting, but some of the things that you have to be receptive of a different perspective, and especially where I've been through a lot, be it personal and Marine Corps. It's like, I've been through what you're talking about right now. Let me offer this perspective. It's probably going to help you. And if somebody, has that posture, it's something I learned. I mean, I was a bartender when I was out and just talking to people constantly. You can tell who you're resonating with and who you're getting through to based off of body language. And it's something that I've just done my whole life. And you can tell when you're, know your audience. I can't express that enough. Even at the commander's level, if they're hot, you might not want to put more gas on it, and right. You might want to extinguish it a little bit, or present it in a way that's not as animated or high tension. And I've become very, very good at that. It's like you don't want to add gas. You want to be an extinguisher. especially if you want to get your point across or come to a resolution of something. So that just body language and things like that is something I'm very in tune with. Eye contact, arms crossing is a first sign of somebody is like they're set, and they're not really listening to what you're saying, or they're not going to change with their mind on something. But there's all kinds of triggers, and I've learned a lot of that in sociology and psychology and stuff in school. So it's just something that I've always kind of taken on in my personal life.
Okay. So I'm going to read you a quote. We must continue to advance and adapt at a pace as fast as the world around us. Doing what we do better or adapting takes today's tools and those arriving in the next few years and combines them with new operating concepts and methods to produce increased competitive advantage for the MAGSHAF. Doing what we do differently will require adaptation, which can only result from fresh thinking that follows a disciplined concept, war game, experiment, exercise path. Do you think we're currently structured to implement that as because that's from General Neller from the Commandant's guidance, and if not, what should we, particularly as it pertains in the OccFld, be doing differently in order to adjust to that guidance?
I think we have the personnel to support that. Absolutely. Do we have the resources, IT-wise, to support that? Probably not. To sustain it, there's not tools in place to do that just yet, and all that stems from a lack of understanding at even some of the senior levels for like requirements and acquisition. You've probably heard me say this countless times, but if you understand the process or how to get things done or how to integrate a piece of equipment with a certain software application or something like that, everybody's stuff is different. So what the 51s are doing now is crucial for something like that, right?
Right.
It doesn't just happen by itself, and you can say, oh, well, my stuff puts out this, and it's like, well, I want to know exactly what it puts out so I can feed this or do that. We're not. We're years away from that. We're years away from that. And until we can kind of admit that to ourselves and put the resources where they need to be, and that doesn't come in a widget or a doodad. That's in the training and education of the people that are going to pull this off, right? Because you can set up your kit any way you want, but if you have a concept of how all that stuff interacts or understand how you can put those components together to create an environment such as that, that takes a lot of work. And it doesn't take just writing it down or speaking it. Somebody has to get it. Somebody has to understand how to pull that off. That's a big role of a warrant officer or senior enlisted folks is okay. So I have commander's intent now. Now I need to implement that, right? So the way to start is what we're doing right now is restructuring our workforce, because that has to be the focus, not the doodads or widgets. Our workforce to where they conceptually understand how to create what he's talking about.
So Sam Carter and I got into this in the course of his episode, in that the amount of information that we're going to be throwing at our NCOs is exponentially greater than those that went before them.
Yeah. All the time, doesn't somebody tell you, well, they're way smarter, or they're way more used to having so much more access or information thrown at them. I'm not as concerned about that. And I will tell you, that's from watching my son in college work on like 4 subjects simultaneously. And I'm like, what are you doing, brah? And he's like, I am working on, my statistics. I'm working on, this chemistry thing and all this. And I'm just watching him multitask across the thing. And he's literally going from 1 to 1. I was like, man, there's no way I could focus like that. But I'm just giving you an example of stuff I've observed over time. So the amount of data I'm less concerned about. It's what do I do with that, right? Or how do I question the answer the box spits out at me? making sure the concepts on all that stuff is actually understood. And I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be okay. But for us older folks, the amount of data we're going to be coming across, not unlike watching my son do all that homework simultaneously, it is going to be like overwhelming for the folks that are not, not exposed to that much data. But our younger folks, I think, will be okay. Yeah, I know I cut you off a little bit.
No, you hit exactly what I wanted to ask. One of the things that Sam brought up was, in his opinion, cognitive capacity needs to be a measurable resource, quantifiable. And I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah,
I agree with him, but once we're capable of that, though, how do we increase that cognitive capacity for that individual? Because
so I think Sam probably hit on this too, because we've discussed it a lot. And I totally agree that it's a mix of human and AI mixed together. Like we talk about a lot of the things we've got going on, the amount of data we have coming across. I would like a system to say, hey, here's what's known, here's what's unknown, and present that to you to work on instead of all the other noise, if you will,
right,
that's in the background. So if you can focus on the immediate threat, or it can kind of, I think it's going to be a mix of that kind of stuff. But it doesn't exist yet. There's elements of it that exist, but you still need the workforce that's going to build it, because it's not going to build itself, although some sci-fi movies will say that. but you know what I mean? It's not.
Yes.
It's not there yet. So we have to have a lot of people, a much larger workforce that understands what you're talking about right now. And I don't think we do. I don't think we do just yet. But it'll come. And if you sat down in 10 years with some of the same folks in this forum, and they were, they understood where all this has gone in that 10 years, it'd probably blow them away. Because, look, you're sitting across from somebody that came in, doing advanced signals analysis in the analog age, right? And right. I was there when the whole digital thing happened, so I get it. I understand the exact reason some of our systems do what they do, because it's all based on rules, right? All those rules that we have are based off of technical data that we have compiled or created for those systems to compare against and give you an answer for. The stuff that's unknown is just that. It's unknown. And if it doesn't line up neatly in a library that all these automated systems have, they don't look at it. Okay.
So I think what you're getting at is that there's still plenty of room for innovation.
Yes.
And to that point, here's another statement from the Commandant. Innovation necessitates making hypotheses about the future operational environment that are then tested for validity, just as Marines did in the 1920s and 1930s. We may not find initial successes in all of our experimentation efforts, but our continued focus and persistence will lead to solutions that will enable our future force. This disruptive mindset must be pursued and fostered when found, or it will not sustain itself within our bureaucracy. We need creative leaders who think. And so going back to the types of the attributes, the characteristics that we're looking for in our Chief Warrant Officer community, I think to kind of juxtapose that with what the Commandant said, we need them to be disruptive innovators. How do we cultivate that at the onset of their career progression? And by extension, how do we retain those individuals when we're getting ready to kind of up in the playing field in regards to our retirement system, so that they may not want to stick around?
Yeah, I honestly do not have an answer. It's something that really troubles me, I am very blessed to have the benefit of being able to retire my high 3 over 30, the CWO5. Yeah, that's nice. Does somebody have that option now? No, it's completely different. Other than the folks that are currently in could stay in up to 30 and do that, but the new batch, I don't know how you retain those. I don't know what that model looks like. So there has to be some type of incentive, like the stuff we're working on with the education equivalency for some of the training we do. So I think if we take a good look at that and make sure we're providing equal compensation or validity of training to what's being taught on the outside, maybe not exactly the same, but at least make it worthwhile so that if the transition happens, you can do that a lot easier than currently. It's like, oh, I just stopped being a Marine doing signals intelligence, and now I'm doing this other job, and all the stuff I learned in the Marine Corps has nothing to do with what I'm doing on the outside. So I think we could do a much better balance of that type of incentive to
leave the individual Marine better than we found him.
Yeah, of course. And then money. I don't know that money is all that important, but I just told you that's a reason that one of the reasons I'm sticking around, that I have a college student son right now,
right.
Paying for that and things, but there's a lot of opportunities for me on the outside that pull at me often, and they become more and more prevalent in my thoughts, especially lately with the physical stuff going on, just kind of figuring out what I'm going to be doing here in a while. So, but it's taken me a long time to get to that point, right? We need to start looking at a model that's much sooner than that. And I think honestly, in my opinion, I think we're going to be looking at a 15-year career path on the high end, right?
Okay.
So you'll have the ability to stay, but as soon as your body starts breaking down and you're going for your first reconstructive surgery on your knee, or like myself, my hips or my shoulder, you're gonna do a life check, because I know I did. It's like, man, how long am I going to be doing this again? And you want me to do another 15 years doing the same thing, where I'm getting my butt kicked all the time and going to hostile situations? I mean, I think it's going to change. Our dynamic is going to change for what we look at a career Marine, or what a career length is. And I think that's going to be at the 12 to 15 year mark. So there's going to have to be a lot of work done for incentive for someone to stay and professionalize at the senior level for the Marines, or all services for that matter.
So not to get too carried away, but I mean, technology's taking off at such a velocity that I don't know if we could fully predict where we're headed in a bunch of different areas, to include medical science, right? I mean, say at the 10-year mark, you go in, you get to borrow from StarCraft, from Blizzard, right? You get a stim pack injection, and it just renews you completely. And that's one of the benefits for sticking around this gun club of ours, is gene therapy or cybernetic implants or augmentation.
You probably already know that they're doing stem cell reconstruction on my hips, and my right side feels fantastic. So I'm looking forward to the left side getting done. And that's that's not a hip replacement. It's me regenerating myself. So I hear you. But we'll see. There's a lot of benefits to staying in. A lot of those being like what we just talked about, medical and
ocular implants.
Yeah, all that crazy stuff. I don't know what it looks like, 10 years from now, how we're going to retain some of our talent pool.
So, if you had to guess, how long have we been sitting here recording?
I don't know. It's probably a couple hours.
We just hit over the 2 hour mark, 2 hours, 12 minutes. Also from the Commandant, every Marine has a story. Find ways to interact and talk with each other. Identify and address one another's personal challenges. Build and strengthen the bonds of camaraderie we share as Marines. Resolve to spend more time socializing with each other. Share your stories, grow with each other, and build friendships that will last a lifetime. And sir, I want to tell you, I genuinely appreciate you sitting down here to have this conversation, to have the courage to press record, for sharing your story, but also for the length of time that you've been in service and the amount of leadership that you've provided to the OccFld. It's not unnoticed. You're highly respected amongst our peer group, and we appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And with that, we're out.